Okay, so please note, as this is a public meeting, this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the City of Beaverton's website. Minutes are still being taken as well. Please make sure you are muted unless you are the active speaker. Attendees are automatically muted, but this isn't a webinar, so that's no longer applicable. Please be aware of any items in your video background which could be offensive or distracting to others. You may select a virtual background in the drop-down list next to the video icon. You are welcome to have open discussion in the chat function at the bottom of your screen, but please be aware the chat becomes public record. I will be monitoring the chat, so feel free to let me know if you have any technical difficulties and I can troubleshoot with you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Megan, and welcome everyone to the September meeting of Beaverton's Bicycle Advisory Committee. My name is Mike Mulligan. I'm the chair of the committee. And so I just want to call our meeting to order and do just a quick review of what we have on the docket this evening for our meeting. We'll be doing the approval of the August minutes. Then we have about 10 minutes for any attendees that are interested in joining the Beaverton Bicycle Advisory Committee, doing a little recruitment and open house. We'll talk about the committee and members can share their experiences. We'll also then have public comment. We're going to have an update from Amy Johnson on the vision plan for the city. Councilor Hasan is with us. Will give us a quick update from the council. Then Bruce Barbarasch is supposed to be joining us from THPRD to have a talk about trails and e-bikes and district practices on that. McTighe will be joining us for the Regional Transportation Safety Strategy. Then Cassara Phipps from Senior Planner from the city will be covering the Cooper Mountain Plan updates. Then we'll have a little discussion about our plan for our City Council annual report. We've got put together just the beginnings of a PowerPoint, so I want the committee to weigh in and give some good ideas of what we should be sharing. Jean will have an update on the City of Beaverton. Finally, we'll have member comments and announcements, and we hope to be finished by 8:30. So we got a packed agenda, so why don't we plan on jumping in? And Jean, has anybody else joined that we have enough to do the minutes, or should we push that back? What do you think?
I think we push it back because I think we really do need John or
Corey.
I can move you around. John or Corey.
Okay.
But Corey doesn't vote.
All right, so we need John.
John.
Okay, and if not, then we'll just do it in October. Very good. So the first thing then is the Bicycle Advisory Committee, the recruitment and open house. And so we want to just be able to share a little bit about our committee and what we do. And Jean, if you want to, I can quickly go over from the city website, kind of the main purposes of our committee. And then we can open it up for members just to share their experiences, the things that they enjoy about the committee, what they see as being our contribution to the city. So really the focus of the Bicycle Advisory Committee is threefold. One is to focus on promoting and education in the safety of bicycling in our city and other related modes of active transportation. Also to provide the city council and the city staff with the perspective of the bicyclist and other active transportation users in any of the significant public and private plans and development projects that are occurring in the city and other related active transportation issues like circulation, access to general use, and things of that nature. And finally, to provide the city council and staff with input and evaluation of existing active transportation infrastructure from the standpoint of the public need and make recommendations on development and priorities in alignment with the active transportation plan and the city's community vision plan. So that's our task, or what we're tasked with. We want to open up for individuals that are on the committee, what their experiences have been, why they joined, what benefits they feel they get in participating in the committee. So I will mute and let others share. Who'd like to go first?
I can go.
Okay.
So my favorite thing about being on the Bicycle Advisory Committee is learning how we don't exist in a vacuum, seeing how cyclists interact with all the different parts of our local government. For example, the Parks and Rec Department, and seeing how we can work with them to make better trails. We just had our city sanitation and street cleaners come to talk to us last month, so we could see how that interacts with us needing to be in the bike lanes, learning about active transportation plan and making our voices heard. So my favorite part is just having that opportunity to see how something I'm passionate about is just a small part of the much bigger organism of everything that is Beaverton.
Great. And John, welcome. We were just starting off and kind of doing an introduction for anybody that's attending virtually or be watching this and might be interested in joining the Bicycle Advisory Committee. So I had gone over kind of what our tasks are, but also just wanting input and maybe why people have joined the committee, what their experiences have been, what things they feel they're able to contribute to, and why others should join us.
I can jump in. So I feel like it's cool to be a part of a group that has I feel like we have real influence over what happens in our community. And so THPRD or the county or the city will come to us for recommendations or for opinions on what they're going to do. And I feel like they do value our opinion, which is, I don't know, I feel like I was surprised. I don't know why I'm surprised, but it just it's a good feeling to know that what you think actually matters. So that's my favorite part.
Great.
Okay, I can go next.
Sure.
Yeah.
Nadia?
So recently I did the Corvallis to Coast bike route has been opened, and I wanted to do that, and I tried to contact them, and they said still things are in the flux and we don't have much information. But then I talked with Jean, and then I told them I'm the BSc member, and they were very responsive. So they shared the maps which they normally don't use the public. They gave all the information to me. Same thing happened last time, like 2 weeks back. I was doing a corner and the road was blocked because they're repairing the tunnel. But it's not but a board saying that it is open for bike. Then again I contact Jean, and then I contact them telling I'm a BSc member. So whenever I use a BSc member, it helps a lot. And people they think I'm also part of the government and they help me a lot. So that is the advantage I'm getting of being a BSc member. And I bother Jane a lot, and thanks and sorry for that.
Wonderful.
I can go next.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was really looking for a way to sort of get more involved in the community. And this was sort of a great avenue for that, and a way that really aligned with a lot of my interests. And I agree with a lot of what people have said about yeah, it's great to know that, that we're sort of helping shape this one part of this larger sort of ecosystem of local government, other orgs, and it's yeah, just a great way to get involved.
Yeah, thanks. Who's next to share? Well, I can say for myself, I've been on the committee for quite a number of years, but coming from working in the healthcare field, it's just been how do we get people to live active lifestyles? And I think cycling and incorporating that into people's fitness activities, their commuting activities, things of that nature, and looking at how do we facilitate that? How can we make it easier for people? I think has been one of the things I feel like we've been able to make contributions on. And also like Bike Beaverton, which is our family ride. It's really great being able to see families get out there, ride together, see little kids. Over the number of years is seeing little kids that were on striders or on bikes with training wheels and seeing them progress to being confident riders with their families out on the streets. It's where you feel like you're really making a difference.
Great to hear you all share your thoughts on this, because I spend every, couple hours every month with you. So thanks to those of you who shared with us. So yeah, Board and Commission recruitment's happening now, and it's information's on the city's website, so you can learn more there. And I'll share with all of you that if any of you have friends or colleagues that you think would also appreciate being a part of this, reach out to the folks that you know.
Sounds great.
Michael's got his hand up.
Yeah, I had kind of a related question. I think my term on the BAC's coming to an end this year, and are we gonna sort of talk about reapplication, or is that basically just application for the same process, basically?
Yes, so I think you're up. I'm going to get this wrong. Amanda is up. Yep, Amanda is up. And I want to say one other person. Oh, I think Michael Dunleavy. So all of you have terms that are expiring. So yeah, the process starts again for all of you. So you'll either hear from Francisca, who works in our community, in our public engagement division first, or me, and we'll you'll hear from us, and I'll cycle back with each of you about kind of how we do the process. I will share, Mike. I'm realizing we skipped introductions, but today it seems like has been the day for folks who are thinking about stepping down, who have emailed me today. Maybe it's because the meeting is now. So I will say I had an email this evening from Cara Lerwick, and she is needing to step down. If you know, Cara is in the Guard, and she is now needing to swiftly move for a deployment with her unit, and she'll be gone for 12 months. So she really, I can tell she, it's hard to leave this committee. She knows we're remote, but just with her commitments in the Guard, it won't be possible for her to continue. So that's really disappointing to see her leave. She is one of our newer members. I think she's been on the committee for 2 years. We also heard from Israel.
Right.
And Mike, what was Israel
With his,
saying? Time commitment.
Right, time commitment with his job and just staffing and in the COVID-related world, the time commitment, he just didn't feel like he could give that time that he feels the committee deserves. So he'll be stepping down, but we certainly encouraged him to participate in volunteering. We're able to get back to activities like Beaverton, and when things return to a sense of normalcy, encourage them definitely to join again, because he's been such an integral member of the committee.
Yeah. And then Caitlin, can I call on you since you're actually here?
Yeah, so as I've mentioned, I live in Portland. I don't live in Beaverton, and my office for my job was in Beaverton, but during COVID, we got rid of our office. And so since I don't spend as much time in Beaverton anymore, I feel like there's probably someone who is actually like from the community who could probably take my place. So I'll also be stepping down the end of this year. But it's been great. I've had a great time.
And we appreciate everything that you've done, and we hope we can continue to call on you with the WTA and partnering with things that we.
Exactly. I'll still be doing this work, just not with this group.
Yep.
So I think that those three, so Cara and Israel are really sort of effective immediately, and as Caitlin said, she'll be with us till the end of the year. For as far along in the year as we are, we're not going to sort of appoint people to fill Cara or Israel's spots. We'll just kind of get a full committee at the beginning of the year through the recruitment process. So some shifting seats on the committee, but we'll get a full group again come January. So any questions or anything else on that? Okay. Great.
All right. And so I think we've got with John with us now. we can go back and do the approval of the minutes. And I want to thank Amanda for running both July's meeting when I was out of town and then an unexpected absence last month, with a little medical stuff going on in the household. So I really appreciate that. And why don't we bring up the minutes and I'll let you all review them. Thank you again, Michael Hashizumi, for doing these. And then we'll call for a vote.
Super minor. This is Nadia Hassan. At the top, my last name was spelled wrong, but it was spelled right below. Very minor.
So sorry.
It's
I don't know how I get it right in one place. And
Right, I
wrong in
know.
the other.
It's like, oh,
I don't
okay.
know.
Just a heads up.
Last month's street sweeping conversation was very interesting for those of you who missed it. And if you didn't watch the recording, go back and watch it because you'll be surprised to learn how we manage all that. And it's very well thought out. So who knew?
Any other comments, corrections, additions?
Yes, I had one. We had a discussion about why we ride, and there were kind of three things going on at once. There were people advocating for kind of restarting why we ride. Jean was kind of nudging the group to dovetail why we ride into supporting Bike Beaverton, which I think makes a lot of sense. And then I think I was the only one that was kind of pushing back on the concept of why we ride. You know, should we just go a different direction instead of trying to restart it? And I don't, maybe getting all three of those elements into the minutes overly complicates things, but I felt like we kind of left it hanging. I think most importantly, we needed to get back to Jean's suggestion that we make why we ride in support of Bike Beaverton. And that would be the thrust of it. But that doesn't really show in the minutes. So that would be my comment. Jean, do you feel the same way?
I think you're reflecting right where I was at the last meeting, which was to tie them together, because that was based on my conversation with our marketing staff to take Why We Ride and Bike Beaverton and use that to help promote the event. The question is, how do the minutes reflect this or not? Because I think that's what I'm hearing you say is you don't feel like it quite grasped that. Is there a sentence or something you'd want to put in? We could procedurally if you wanted to offer a friendly amendment, if you want to take a few minutes to suggest something, we could do that before we take a vote on it. Or you could just say what you said and Michael can capture it for these minutes and we can let these minutes be. I'm looking to you to sort of guide what you're looking for.
I would just say, I think most importantly, we need to decide whether or not we want to dovetail Why We Ride into supporting Bike Beaverton. As it stands now, that's not reflected. And Why We Ride is going off with the survey and people submitting information and profiles, but none of that has anything to do with Bike Beaverton. So I guess the sentence would be, the committee needs to decide the role Bike Beaverton has with the Why We Ride program. And then maybe in the open business today, we can decide whether or not, we want to bring those together or keep them separate. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just trying to support you.
Where would it go?
If you don't.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Let's stop it.
No, thank you. I'm looking at this and trying to figure out how to edit, where to put that. The very end.
Yeah, I think I tried to capture some of that in the paragraph at the top of your screen, especially with that last sentence, which can be used to promote future Bike Beaverton. So maybe you can just sort of build off of that with some of what John's talking about.
Yeah, I agree.
I think you said something like this. Of that.
Exactly.
All right. Look at that, I snuck it in.
All right, sorry to take so long for that.
That's okay. It's good to get clarity. I'll be Mike for a moment and say I think he's looking for a motion.
If that is all the corrections we have, then I am looking for a motion to approve the minutes from August 2021. And I'm not seeing everybody. Somebody raising a hand?
I see Ananda and Amanda.
Okay, and then Amanda, first and second. Let's have a motion for approval, or we have the motion for approval. Everyone say aye if you approve.
Aye.
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 All right, looks like we have approval, and I abstain since I wasn't here. Our meeting minutes are approved for August.
I also abstain for the record. 'cause I
Okay.
wasn't there.
Right, sorry. All right, with that taken care of, that brings us to opportunity for public comment. Megan, do we have anybody? You see that?
I'm going to email
not a-
Amy.
It's not a webinar, so if there's public comment, they could be live, and
Okay,
I don't see anyone hiding out there.
okay. Well, if anybody joins from the public and they want to, we'll just kind of fit them in as we're going through the rest of the agenda. So that brings us to, want to send the email, Jean, to Amy. We're right about at her time at 7 o'clock.
Just emailed her, so hopefully
Okay.
she'll hop back in. So I think she actually left, or is she in the background?
Looks like she left.
Looks like she left. Okay.
Hi there.
There we go.
I just got an email that hi, can you hear me? Hi. Okay, great. I didn't hear you for a moment. So thanks for having me today, and sorry if you know, it took a few minutes for me to get here. But so I'm part of the Visioning Advisory Committee, and you can hear my kid in the background. Sorry about that. We are starting, I don't know if everybody knows about the Beaverton Community Vision or not. And how long do I have to talk with you guys? Just a few minutes or?
About 5 minutes.
5 or so.
Okay, okay, cool. So let's see. So the community vision happens approximately every 5 years, and we do outreach within the community. And we have a survey already, which is our first survey for this year, but not the only survey or the only opportunity to get involved. And the reason we do the outreach is so that we know what the priorities are of the community, and then this information gets synthesized by members of the VAC, and I think maybe additional members. We haven't worked all of those details out on like theme teams that are working on specific areas of interest within the community for their priorities. So the reason I'm coming today is, first, we would love to have you take the survey. You probably got links to the survey. I think we all got emails from, like, can't remember who it is who sends the messages about community involvement stuff to everybody on the boards and commissions. But anyways, I know you saw that there, but if you would take the survey, and also if you could share it with anybody you know. And then also, moreover, like, we this year really want to make sure that our community vision is really reflecting the voices of people who aren't typically heard. So if you have ideas of how we can do that, or if you're interested in looking at questions and also our outreach process as things move along, we'd love to get feedback from you, from y'all, and, you know, be partners in that way. So I'm going to copy the link and also the link to our vision. And then if anybody, yeah, it's available in, oh, actually somebody already posted it in. Yeah, it's available in multiple languages. And that first link is the link, I think, that goes just to our page about the community vision, what it is. And the link I just dropped is the one to the, specifically to the survey, and it's in multiple languages. So yeah, I don't know if anybody's got any questions about the vision process. And of course, being the bike advisory, you are maybe in a special role in that you do represent folks or are interested in bike infrastructure. And it seems like sometimes car infrastructure is more prioritized, in my view, at least in the city. So any questions or comments?
Anybody?
Seems
I'm
like,
just curious, Amy, it moves along. I'm trying to recall the last time we did this, if we have like a member from our committee that joins to do it, or as you compile information, will you be coming to the committee looking for overall feedback?
well, if you have thoughts about how that could work, and even if you think of it later, if you could pass it on through staff liaisons to the VAC, that would be great. There's kind of a couple of ways that it could go. Like, we could either bring information back to you afterwards, or in the past, what I heard was that, because this is my first year, that the theme teams, which are focused on specific areas within the interest groups, that we have maybe members from other committees on those theme teams. And the theme teams, if we use them, then they will be refining the specific objectives or goals within the strategies of how to meet the priorities of the city, of the residents, all the people who take all the surveys, and we'll be doing targeted outreach and focus groups, etc. But yeah, so the theme teams would maybe focus on one area and figure out what are the ways, the goals that we can reach to meet that vision. So that might be one way, or once those goals and priorities are listed out, maybe we can come back to. So if you guys have idea of what might be better, I know it sounds nebulous because we're just starting the process, but.
And Gina, the whole committee can kind of touch base maybe as you're getting the initial information back, if there's like an initial readout and they want input, we can kind of see how that works. But I think definitely encourage everyone to fill that out because it's a great way to make viewpoints heard and get it on the radar for the committee, and then we can continue to participate.
Amy, I do have a question here. You talk about the theme team, and in the most recent vision plan, it has these community identified goals, right? Maintain and enhance livability, build community, maintain and enhance public services, create a vibrant central core, and improve mobility. Are those getting another look, or are those going to stay the same? Do you know?
Well, we won't necessarily have those specific categories, although those categories might be like what the theme teams are focused around, or different categories that seem more reflective of what people are interested in now. We are kind of at a place where we want to be open to just being sort of more of a blank slate than going with what's already been there, just because of the social upheaval in the last few years and like the reality of climate change being on our doorstep being very different than what it was before. And of course, like all the social changes. So we're not 100% sure whether those are going to reflect really where people are now or not. But yeah, those would probably be the general categories. And we do want to look at what's already been done so that we're not starting from nowhere. And if people have already given us the information, we're not asking the same questions to the same people over and over again, because that can cause fatigue too.
Great, thank you.
Great. Well, thanks, Amy, for your time, and we look forward to hearing more as the vision progresses along.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me today, and keep up the good work.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. That brings us to Councilor Hassan. Welcome again. Happy to hear what's happening with the City Council.
Yeah, happy Thursday. I will not be able to stay for this whole meeting. Just wanted to give you the heads up, but super wanted to make sure I came for this portion at minimum. Jenny started, she's our new city manager. So she's on week 3. And so just very excited to have a new administrative head to the city in our new form of government. We've got a lot to work through and work on. So we're really excited about her having started. In our last meeting, we had a lot of different discussions. We talked about shelter. We've got a problem with folks suffering from houselessness. So what does it look like to provide shelter in Beaverton? We talked about several other items, nothing that I think screams Bicycle Advisory Commission, but is always good to check out our agenda, which I'll drop in the chat. Nothing really major, I think, going on right now. We've had a light summer meeting schedule, but always, if you have questions about what we're working on in council, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email or reach out. I also do just want to give my little 30-second please get vaccinated. If you are not or cannot get vaccinated, please wear a mask, double mask if you want, and please maintain 3 to 6 feet distance. We had kids going back to school this week, which is really exciting, but also with Delta right now and what we're seeing, we really want to make sure we slow the spread. So get vaccinated, mask if and when you can, social distance, and try to avoid large gatherings. And if you are in them, please mask. So I'll take questions if you have any. Otherwise, I'll drop some stuff in the chat for y'all.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Well, I know Councilor Hassan may be needing to leave, but one of the things we'll be working on later on is our plan for the report out to City Council in the not too distant future. So maybe as we get that together, if it's not at the meeting, we can reach out just to kind of get your feedback or suggestions as it becomes a little bit more of a formed idea.
Absolutely.
I had a question. I know in the last meeting you discussed that City Council was going to sort of hash out some of the ARPA funding that the city was going to get. I was curious if any of that, I'm not sure sort of how that money is allocated, but I was curious if any of that is getting allocated to like capital projects or any sort of active transportation projects in particular?
I'm trying to remember if it can go to capital projects or transportation projects, and I can't recall. What I do remember is we had a roundtable conversation where each counselor kind of discussed what they'd like to see or where they'd like to see the funds go. We do need to use some of the money for a revenue shortfall, likely at minimum, but we have yet to identify a process or plan for what it looks like with the rest of the funding. There was conversation around sort of letting boards and commissions submit ideas or proposals, doing a community engagement. One of the things that I'm struggling with as a newer counselor is we are really, we like to hear from the community a ton, but we don't always act or execute upon it. So as much as I want to make sure we reach out to people, personally, I just want to be careful of what we promise. And so my message was like, if we're going to do some sort of engagement where we want to engage the community, which I 100% support, I want to be really thoughtful that it comes with some actual teeth versus, hey, we want to hear from you and we didn't do anything that you suggested. Thanks for coming. So I would assume once Jenny gets more kind of acclimated, she will really be the person that drives what she is thinking is the way to look at allocating and looking into those ARPA funds. And if you want, Michael, I'm happy to do a little search on capital projects. I feel like that was a no, but it's very specific, like buckets. So it's got to be like something related to public health, which like the city doesn't really touch public health, but it can be like housing because affordable housing is an issue. It's got to be something kind of related to that COVID-19. I'm going to find the deck that they presented and drop it in the chat so you can take a look as well. Thanks for the question.
Great, thank you. Good answer.
Any other questions? Well, again, thank you so much for your time and fitting us in, Councilor Hasan, and we look forward to seeing you next month or reaching out beforehand as we get things pulled together for the presentation. All right, so that brings us to Bruce and back to the topic of trails and e-bikes. Welcome.
Howdy, folks. Good to see you all. It's been a little while. For the record, I've been out doing a lot of cycling. I've had 2 bicycle trips this summer and spring, one on the C2C trail, Corvallis to the Sea. And if you haven't heard about it, it's pretty cool. And there's a pedestrian version and then there's a cycling version of it. So it's worth checking out. But closer to home, Park District is continues to maintain trails for bicycle riders, walkers, people with various kinds of wheels. And we have gotten a little feedback from you all about e-bikes a couple months back. And I know there were some additional questions that came in. So I don't have a completely new talk for you all, but I'm happy to answer questions, or if it's useful for me to rehash a little bit about where we are with e-bikes, I can do that. I'm gonna kind of defer a little bit to Mike on this one.
Okay, Bruce, and I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I think, John, had you had some observations on the trail of e-bike users that was a concern you wanted to bring to Bruce's attention?
Yeah, I guess I'm the one that brought it up last time. I ride the Fano Creek Trail a couple times a week from end to end. And I don't want to overstate it. It's not happening every time, but it seems like about every 3rd or 4th time I encounter somebody going at high speed on an e-bike. I had a kind of ugly encounter with somebody who wanted to fight over his speed. He was only going 18 miles per hour, he said, and I just kept rolling. But he was going way too fast. Another time I encountered somebody that I'm sure was going faster than 18 miles per hour. And we're all experienced bicyclists, and we know, a pleasant riding speed on a trail with pedestrians is like 10 or 11 or 12 miles per hour.
Yep.
So I just bring it up. Some of these new e-bikes, as we all know, are legitimate e-bikes, so to speak, but some are just electric mini bikes. And they're really not bicycles designed for pedaling. And I don't think they belong on the trail. At the very least, I think we need to have some type of speed limit or maybe speed awareness, with a portable radar thing like you see on the streets. But I think we need to make people aware, particularly those on e-bikes, that 18 miles per hour is way too fast and dangerous, and someone's going to get hurt. There's no signage that I have seen on Fatal Creek Trail. I've never seen any enforcement. It just kind of, at this point, it seems like we're just waiting for something bad to happen. And I think Tualatin Hills Park District should step up with improved signage, maybe some speed limit signs or advisory signs, and maybe some other things. So that's my piece.
Okay, well, John, I appreciate you sharing the perspective. I recognize that different users have different concepts of speed and what's comfortable and what's safe. And I would say once a month we get a speed complaint, and it's not exclusively e-bikes. It can be road type riders, clad in Lycra and such. Sometimes it really is someone who's behaving in an unsafe manner. They are weaving, they are zipping too close to pedestrians. Sometimes it is simply a perception issue. We have two groups who work on trails. One is a little bit more maintenance oriented, and the other is our safety services group. You might know them formerly as Park Patrol, and they're a little bit more on the education and enforcement side. They have been actually going out to trails and trying to interact with folks, especially when we see patterns of, I'll just say, less than ideal behavior. And so they are out there. They generally work from about mid-morning until after dark. And so if you're seeing a pattern on a specific trail, then we're real happy to try and intercept. Otherwise, their efforts are, I would say they're variable. It's just hard to know where and when there will be a situation. We don't have a specific rule about speed, and as yet, our board has not addressed updating our rule book. Staff have talked, and we've checked in with other agencies, and the approach we're going to propose, which this committee seemed to endorse, is to regulate the behavior versus the device that folks are on. Simply because for a lot of people, an e-bike is a legitimate way to get outside, and I recognize there are some folks who just hit the gas, so to speak, and kind of zip along. But I would especially say if you're seeing like Tuesday afternoons, or if there's some kind of organized ride and you're sensing like this is a time that we could be most effective out there, I'd love to get an email from you or a phone call or what have you, and we'll do what we can. We have also started, we're not super fond of signs because we feel like signs generally aren't very effective. Like if you think about, you're driving down the highway and you're following the speed limit, how many times has everyone passed the big, 55-mile-an-hour sign? There's multiple people doing 70 in the left lane, right? It's like they know what the speed limit is, but they make a personal decision, right? And so what we're trying to do is put out, we're in the process of taking kind of an amalgam of signs from other agencies about yield and courtesy, and we're going to try putting them out on A-frames. And we're going to put them out only temporarily so they catch people's eye for a little while, and then we'll put them away. Because I think when they're up for a long time, it just is invisible, kind of like wallpaper in your house. You don't notice it, right? But if you or others have other ideas, recognizing we only have so many staff resources, we're real happy to listen and to try out different things if that seems functional.
I have a curiosity question for the committee. I'm wondering how many people have ridden an e-bike yet? I had my first experience up in Marquette, Michigan this summer. And it really is, I know there are different classes of it, but it was my wife's uncle, and they have ones where there's always the throttle just to start accelerating with it, and then you can set it at different levels. And it does kind of give you the perpetual tailwind feeling. And maybe that's something as a committee, maybe we could sometime run the bike shops or something, see if we could get the committee together and go out just to have the experience of what an e-bike is like and kind of have that perspective when we're talking about these things.
Yeah, I think all of the Portland Bike Town bikes are now e-bikes,
Okay.
and I got a chance to try one of those out this year, and it's very cool. Big fan.
And I'm curious, Bruce, with other groups that you've been reaching out with. I was out in DC recently, and one of my friends is now retired from City of Arlington. He was one of the city planners, and I was asking him what they've done because they have such an extensive trail system in Arlington. And he said basically they haven't tried regulating speeds either with the e-bikes, but it's going to be kind of interesting as more and more people are starting to use them, just how it grows organically or how we just try to do that education.
Right, and I think that's a good point, that there will be more people going a little faster than they might under their own muscle. One thing also to consider is since the pandemic started, we've had a huge surge in usership overall. Right. So I would say during year one of the pandemic, we saw about double the normal number of users. And now we're about 50% over normal. So I think we hit a peak and we've come down, but we have not got back to pre-pandemic levels. And so I think that's another contributing factor to the fact that trails just feel more crowded. So anyone who's not behaving in a really calm manner appears a lot more threatening. And I totally get that. So I'm asking folks on all sides of the thing to try and, again, communicate with us. We'll do it when we can, but also to try and give people a little space. Like, this is what people have right now. It's like, it's the trail, it's the park, and it's a little tough to share. One thing that you might want to let folks know who may be a little more timid about going out is we tend to see the highest use after 10 a.m. So that first chunk of the morning is usually pretty quiet according to our trail counters. And then we see a tail off around dinner time on towards the end of the day, generally speaking. And that's true pretty much across the board. In pre-pandemic times, we saw different sort of shaped curves of usage, sometimes corresponding with commute time, sometimes just, I think now people's recreation time really shifts a lot. If there's no more questions, are there any more questions about e-bikes? And I have one or two other little updates.
I have one real quick one. As far like classes and things like that, the THPRD offers, have you done ones that are about bikes or bikes riding skills? I'm wondering if that would be something with more people on e-bikes and potentially not as having as much experience or as recent experience being on a bike, whether that might be something not necessarily focused on enforcement, but that education aspect of it, having classes for people on e-bikes just to work on the riding skills that go along with having the e-bike.
You know, I'm really glad you brought that up, because years back we had basic bicycle maintenance, as well as some kind of group rides of various sorts, including some through our Trails Advisory Committee. And for whatever reason, those kind of tailed off, but it seems like an appropriate thing. Maybe even just introductory classes about how to get into biking or what to look for at an e-bike or a commute bike or whatever. And I think we had collaborated with bicycle. Well, I'm really tongue-tied tonight. It's been a long day. With the West Side Transportation Alliance on some of these classes for a while. Right. And I think COVID has just kind of like slowed us down.
Yeah, that might be something.
We're also trying to do like public with the WTA, and we're also trying to do like public classes and stuff. And the turnout it depends. The in-person stuff, definitely not as much. So.
Has that been the one with Wasco bikes?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay.
I guess if I could throw something out as food for thought, I think it's a really complicated issue. You know, like when we look at the bike maps, you know, that show resources, I mean, it shows trails and multi-use paths, right? So in a sense, they're kind of, in that respect, part of the transportation network.
Right.
You know, I think we'll all acknowledge that somebody acting dangerously on the path is not very friendly. You know, sometimes maybe it's a matter of the width of the path, you know, and some of those paths are older and some of the new ones tend to have a wider standard where, you know, the relative speed feels different. You know, I don't think it's just a simple matter of e-bikes are bad on paths, you know, and 10 miles an hour should be the rule. It's just because I think I don't bike as part of my commute on a high use path, but I bike on low use paths as part of my commute. And I'm certainly going as fast as I can in that scenario. You know, so it's really complicated. And the roadway network is not safe and friendly for cyclists in a lot of circumstances. And the paths are the best resource.
Yep, I agree. It is complicated, a lot of factors. And just to Corey's point, the newer trails that we build have a 12-foot paved standard with a 2-foot shoulder. A lot of the older trails can be 10 feet, 8 feet, sometimes even 6 feet. And we've been working on a regional trail inventory project where we're looking at the condition of the asphalt surface as well as whether they meet current design standards. And we're trying to create a capital and prioritization process to upgrade the most critical trail sections as we have funding available. So know that we're aware of it and we're very slowly but steadily working on it.
And Bruce, you had a couple other things you wanted to share?
Yeah, so there was a question / suggestion from a committee member about adding some on-street signage to help connect broken sections of trail. So for example, if you ride the Waterhouse Trail north from the Tualatin Hills Nature Park, you about a year ago, we completed a crossing of Willow Creek, which puts you out on a cul-de-sac real close to Cornell Road. And there is a little map there at the end of the trail that says, here's how to get to the next section if you want to go north of Highway 26. But once you get rolling beyond there, you're kind of on your own. Or if you don't know about the trail segments, you might not be able to find them. And so I had a conversation with Jean, and I also reached out to the city's traffic engineer, Jabra, to say, hey, can we get together and partner on some signs? If we provide signs that meet city standards, would the city be interested and willing to install them? So I appreciated the nudge, and I'm hopeful that we can work something out and start to pilot a program like that, because I think it would be good advertisement and it would encourage, you know, less bold riders perhaps to make the leap.
Great.
And then the last thing I've got is some of you are aware that we've been doing a planning study for Highway 26 crossing of the West Side Trail.
Right.
And we're kind of wrapping up that study right now. We're looking at cost estimates and trying to find funding for it. And it's a hugely expensive project, but it's also one of those ones where there's just not that many places for pedestrians to get across. And so it seems like a really good long-term project, and we'll keep you updated as we have new developments on that.
Wonderful, Bruce. Thank you so much for that. And you're always welcome at our meetings, and you can put an end to your long day. Get a good night's sleep.
Thank you. I'm going to hang out for a little bit longer.
Okay.
And again, if folks have questions, they can contact me directly, or they can send them through Jean or whatever is easiest.
Perfect. Lake, welcome. So you got the Regional Transportation Safety Strategy.
Happy to be here. Yes, thanks for the invitation. My name is Lake McTighe, and I am a regional transportation planner at Metro in the Planning and Development Department. And I was the project manager for the Regional Transportation Safety Strategy. And I'm going to really focus on an update on a progress report of progress that regional partners have made in the last 2 years to implement the strategic actions in the strategy. So I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Nice to see you too, Bruce, by the way. It's been a while. And let's see. Can y'all see that? Let's see if I can. I'm going to see if I can see both my notes and the PowerPoint at the same time. Let me see if I can do that real quick. Now I've really screwed something up. I just. Oh wait, now my other monitor isn't working. So I'll just move here.
Such a modern problem, right?
I have no idea what I just did, but now I'm on my laptop. Okay, I'll just whatever. I'll just do it. I'll go with it. I should have just gone. There we go. Okay. Okay, well, I can't see my notes, so I'm going to be, and now I'm looking down instead of at my camera, but can you see that? No, okay.
No, you're not sharing it.
I'm not sharing it, okay. I'm usually a little bit more with it than this, but there you go, okay. There we go. All right, well, I can't see my notes, but I know this information inside and out, so. So to start off, we always want to acknowledge the people that have been killed in the region in traffic crashes. And this is in alignment with the regional adopted Vision Zero target of 0 traffic deaths and fatalities by 2035, and acknowledging that even 1 death on our roadways is too many. So every 3 days in the region, someone is killed in a traffic crash in our region, and every day someone is seriously injured. So I just want to give you a bit of just a little bit of a context of what the regional transportation safety strategy is. And I'm not going to delve into the strategy, though I will be touching on the strategic actions. I believe that Jean provided a link to the strategy in the agenda. And so this is the first adopted regional transportation safety strategy. It was adopted in 2018 by the Metro Council as part of the 2018 Regional Transportation Plan. So it informed the Regional Transportation Plan and provides policies, goals, objectives, performance targets, actions, and performance measures. And it uses a racial equity and public health framework, as well as the safe system approach, which I won't go into too much detail here, but it is a proven approach that is being very successfully implemented in countries elsewhere in the world. The Federal Highway Administration is really promoting this approach because of its multi-pronged approach and because it's proven to work. And it really is based on a philosophy that humans are vulnerable to impact and crashes, and that people make mistakes, and that we need to build and operate a transportation system that accounts for mistakes and make sure that they're not deadly. And then the strategy is a regional plan, so it's implemented by state, regional, local, and community partners like the city of Beaverton. And as I mentioned, it has a Vision Zero target. So what I'm going to be kind of giving you an update on is kind of where we are. So as I mentioned, we have a Vision Zero target in the strategy, and we also set annual targets. We set them for fatalities, serious injuries, as well as for each mode. So motor vehicles, bicycle, pedestrian, motorcycle crashes are included in motor vehicle. And then we also set targets for fatality rates and serious injury rates by vehicle miles traveled and by population. So there's a lot of different graphs like the ones that are shown here, but because of time, I'm just showing you these two, but the progress report that was shared with a link in your agenda includes links to a performance report that we submit each year. We've submitted it twice now to the federal government as well as to ODOT. And we report out on all of these different targets. So this is just showing fatalities and serious injuries for all travel modes. And the takeaway here is that we are trending in the wrong direction. That's the red dotted line. We're going in the opposite direction than the targets that you can see there. And these are the targets that we have set out to 2035 for fatalities and serious injuries. And then the blue bars show the actual observed number of fatalities and serious injuries. It's an annual average of 5 years of data. And that's just really to account for the random nature of crashes. And I should say, just please feel free to chime in if you don't, interrupt and ask a question if you don't understand something or I'm not being clear. So in the progress report, we really lead with no death is okay. And then we talk about that not everyone is equally safe on our roadways. So we really delve into looking at the disproportionate impact, the disparities that people of color in Oregon and Multnomah County and the region, and this is shown nationally as well, particularly Black people experience. And more research and more data is needed at the more granular level, such as Beaverton or Washington County. But we know that this is really the case everywhere because it is the same statistics across the country, statewide, regionally. So particularly Black people are more likely to be killed, more likely to be pulled over in a traffic incident, more likely to have higher fines. And so this disparity is really playing out in a life or death way on our roadways. And more action is needed to reduce these disparities. So this is a very high level roll-up of a progress report on the 6 strategic action areas that are within the Regional Transportation Safety Strategy. And what I'll say here is just that we've made some progress, but we really do need more prioritization of safety. This assessment is not a numerical type of assessment of progress. It was based on interviews of staff, including Beaverton staff, Community leaders such as Oregon Walks and Street Trust, and other implementers, and then assessment looking at current policies, legislation that's been passed, etc. So you can see on the left here the 6 different strategies. We really led with protecting vulnerable users, which includes people walking and biking, accessing transit, and then reducing disparities. So that's the first strategic action. And if you want to know kind of more about that, I encourage you to look at the strategy, which goes into more description around each of these. But some successes and progress made was that in the region, we filled nearly 100 miles of combined sidewalk, trail, and bikeway gaps, and we expanded an understanding of the disproportionate impact, as I was describing, because there was some good research and analysis done at the state level at Multnomah County and Portland. But we really do need to know more. And so on the right-hand column is some suggestions of what regional leaders could prioritize more, or things that they could do in the next 2 years to increase safety. And again, this is based on adopted plans and policies and input from professionals working in this area. The second one is to design roadways for safety. And this is really about designing roadways with a Vision Zero framework, so that we are prioritizing safety over speed and making places really safe for a person in a wheelchair, a person that is biking that might not be a strong and fierce bicyclist, someone that's accessing transit with their kids. So some progress made here was to develop new state, regional, and local street design standards. Metro just adopted new designing livable streets and trails design guidelines. The Oregon Department of Transportation has the blueprint for urban design, which is focused on state highways that are really like major arterials. And we identified safety needs and opportunities on many high injury corridors. And part of this was done through development of projects for regional investment measure. So we do have a pretty clear idea of many of the needs out there, defined really even to, like, you know, where we need lighting, where we need the sidewalk gaps, the bikeway gaps. But more prioritization of funding for these really high dangerous and high risk arterials is really needed, especially for pedestrians, because that is one area where we're seeing fatalities continue to rise here and elsewhere. The third strategy is to reduce speeds and speeding, and this is really speeds is a critical area. We're going to turn the trend around and have less fatalities. Speed is a factor in fatal crashes, and it's one way that we can really lower the numbers. So some progress, great progress that has been made, is that we have modernized statewide speed studying methodologies, which will lead to the ability to set lower speeds on roadways. There's lowered speed limits on local roadways in Portland, and we're going to be seeing more of that in the region, and more fixed speed cameras in more communities. But we really need to do a lot more. Countries with very low fatal and serious injury crashes tend to have much lower speeds, and in some communities, you know, the standard speed for an urban area is 20 miles per hour in Europe, in some European countries. Addressing aggressive and distracted driving and addressing impaired driving, there was, you know, not enough progress made in these areas. They are very difficult to tackle. They're thorny social problems, and it's really going to take a coordinated, accelerated coordinated effort among partners to address this. And it really is something that needs to be addressed at many levels of society. But there are some new technologies which are really promising that, if allowed, such as alcohol detection systems in vehicles that would be just pervasive, could have a huge impact. And then finally, the last strategy was engagement and coordination. And examples of progress in this area is developing a regional Safe Routes to School campaign, which included many partners, and then ongoing coordination and policy at various levels of government, which have been really helpful. So even in the midst of a pandemic, there was a lot of work being done around transportation safety, from legislation to policy making to building projects. And yet we're still seeing this worrisome trend. And that's where we really want to start thinking about what can we do more in the next few years. So I'm going to touch on that briefly. Doing more of what is working. And this map is to a little bit of a glimmer of hope, just because the traffic deaths per million residents in the Portland area is one of the lowest in the country compared to other regions. And, we know that this is very much due to land use, that we have shorter trips, we have less trips made by car per person in this region, more trips by transit, walking, and bicycling. Destinations are closer together, people spend less time driving. There may be cultural factors, there may be other reasons that we don't have enough research to draw conclusions from, but we do know that there are things that are working here and we want to do more of them. And then prioritizing safety over speed, and implementing other strategies. And this is a list using the safe system approach, looking at safe speeds, vehicles, road users, safe roads, emergency services responses, and then shifting more to transit, walking, and bicycling, the safe system for all. A variety of research, and there's links within the progress report that you have, really estimates dramatic reduction in deaths each year if these things that we do have access to now, these various strategies, and some of which are already being implemented, but we could implement more and prioritize more, could really get us much closer to Vision Zero. Everything from speed management strategies to driver assistance systems to alcohol detection in cars to really much better road design improvements, such as roundabouts or medians, narrowing of lanes, things like that. So these are some strategies that we already know. We just need to really be prioritizing them more. And then just to end, as we're seeking input from our leadership, I'll be presenting to the Joint Policy Advisory Committee on Transportation next week, and talking with that committee that allocates millions and millions of dollars in funding for transportation. What more can we be doing to prioritize safety even more? So I pulled up again these sort of potential directions that we could prioritize safety, and it will very much take leadership as this last strategy here is to, integrate the safe system approach into everything we do, coalesce leadership around Vision Zero, and that really does mean prioritizing safety over speed, and then engaging the public to demand safer streets and increase regional collaboration. So these are some ideas that we are, are already in our strategy, but that we want to sort of raise up to our elected leaders and other decision makers and get their input on. So I will share just quickly, and I can share the slideshow with Jean if that's helpful, but please do reach out to me if you have any questions after this presentation. I'm always happy to engage. So this is my email, and then also the link to our safety page at Metro. I'll stop sharing there. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties.
Oh, no worries, Blake. Thank you so much. Let's open it up. If committee members have any questions for Lake right now, or we can certainly follow up with emails and get those responses too.
Yeah, I have a question. Hi, Lake. I'm curious if you have any information about what the fatality rates were during the low traffic period early in the pandemic.
Yeah, so while VMT went way down especially in the very beginning of the pandemic, and for a short few months in 2020, crashes just kind of almost disappeared. But then as speeds increased, and this was seen globally, that roads were emptier, but speeds were higher. And so the fatality rate increased for crashes. And we are now back to normal, if not higher levels of fatalities since mid last year. They've continued to increase, and we probably will have one of the higher fatality rates this year.
Has there been any conversation in putting some goal in there about VMT?
Yes, there has. So that is already a regional target, is to reduce VMT per capita. It's one of our regional transportation targets. And the link to safety is strong in that places with lower VMT per capita have a lower fatality rate. And so really there's many benefits to lowering VMT, health, environmental, et cetera. So it's one of the main goals of the regional transportation plan.
And for those not familiar, VMT stands for vehicle miles traveled.
Okay.
Thanks, Corey. I do need my planner interpreter.
Any other quick questions for Lake?
I had a question. Could you talk about how different agencies and municipalities sort of integrate in this safety strategy when approaching projects? Like if, say, the city of Beaverton were to start a new capital project, is this safety strategy on there sort of as a checklist, or how do different organizations sort of interpret these goals?
Yeah, and Jean, feel free to chime in as well on your end. But it's an iterative process. So this is a regional plan, and all of the local transportation system plans need to be consistent with the regional transportation plan. So as they're updated, things like policies and targets are updated into local plans. But then at a project level, for example, Jean and I have worked on a couple projects, local projects together. And as we're scoping the project and looking at the background documents that should inform how the project's going to be developed, something like the regional transportation safety strategy would be on there, or things like our high injury corridors. We've identified a set of high injury corridors in the region where 60% of serious crashes are occurring on 6% of the roads, and Canyon Road is on that, TV Highway is on that, Hillsdale Highway is on that. So there's, all the main roads that you would assume are on that. And we will look at that to inform, like, we need to do something safety oriented on these for these projects.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of data. It's often the data that we get from ODOT is the full data set is 2 years old. Unfortunately, we do get fatal data sooner, but it's not geocoded to location. I mean, we have the location in the Excel spreadsheet, but it's not in GIS yet. So there's this time lag in terms of the data for that. However, the problems on these roads are pretty old, and they continue to show up year after year as problem areas. And TV Highway is probably the most dangerous road in the state.
Well, thanks again, Lake, for your time and sharing that with us, and definitely be happy to have you back as things progress to share with the committee. It's interesting stuff.
Yeah, thanks for allowing me to share a little snapshot.
You bet.
All right.
Take care, and feel free to stay on the call.
All right, have a good night.
You too. All right, Cassandra, I'm sorry we're running a little bit behind here, but update us with Cooper Mountain.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Cassara Phipps. I'm a senior planner with the city of Beaverton. And first I just want to say thanks for having me here tonight. So I have a brief presentation here, and I'll try to be mindful of time and keep us on track here. So let's see. So we are here to provide just an update of the Cooper Mountain Community Plan. This is a 3-year planning effort that's being led by the city. We're about halfway through. Ultimately, this project will determine how we're going to provide new neighborhoods, and that's inclusive of everything that comes along with the neighborhood. So homes, roads, parks, trails, the utilities that often go under those roads. And this project, like Lake mentioned, I think a lot of the planning teams now are really trying to apply this lens of racial equity. And so making sure that we think about the outcomes of this project and the plan, as well as, you know, who we're engaging in this effort. So here is our project timeline. The star shows that we're in phase 2. This is the community planning phase. But we spent a lot of the first year really doing our homework. We did existing conditions reports, natural resource inventories. We looked at different funding tools that might be available to the city, completed a market study that looked at the feasibility of commercial uses in the area. And from there, tried to identify some opportunities as well. So looking at best practices in terms of planning, particularly for areas that are so rich in natural resources and also kind of constrained due to their steep topography. So under the community planning phase, we are trying to develop objectives and metrics that will help us meet our project goals. And I'm going to talk in a little bit more detail about the plan concepts. For the plan, these are kind of early ideas and options that we've been discussing with the community. Moving forward, we're going to be developing different alternatives for the plan, and we'll be rolling those out to the community next spring and asking for your ideas on these 3 different scenarios for the plan. From there, we will take that input and develop a preferred alternative for the area, and that's going to provide the basis really for all of our implementation work. So how are we going to fund these projects? What are the policies, zoning, and code changes that need to be in place to implement the plan? And then by the end of next year, so December 2022, we aim to have all of that work complete and have the plan adopted. Once it's adopted, then we would begin bringing properties inside city limits and allowing development to begin. So we're still, a couple years out from any type of development review. But I can say the last year and a half has gone by quickly. So I think we have a lot to do, and time's going to fly by, and we'll have a plan here soon enough. The two arrows that are shown on the bottom are kind of, concurrent efforts that are taking place throughout this plan. One is the Cooper Mountain Utility Plan. So there is an effort led by our engineering team that's developing master plans for stormwater, sewer service, and water to this area. So we're coordinating really closely with that group to make sure that our plans are kind of informing one another. Oftentimes utilities do follow the roads. However, there are cases such as with water where it really depends on pressure zones and whatnot. The multicultural engagement that's shown on the bottom there, again, is kind of a reference to our equity lens. We also have a partnership with Unite Oregon, that is a community-based organization that is doing some engagement for the city, hosting community events, really kind of prioritizing the engagement of BIPOC community members. And then they have also helped us establish what's called an inclusive housing cohort to provide input into this project, as well as other city-led housing efforts. All right, so now we'll kind of dive into these plan concepts. We'll look at these individually, but as we kind of transition from plan concepts to alternatives, what the alternatives phase will do is kind of integrate all of these ideas into one scenario or map. So these are kind of different levers we can pull, different options for each of these that we may want to highlight or use to distinguish different alternatives moving forward. So our first concept is neighborhoods for all. The kind of yellow neighborhood blobs that you see on this map are based on our buildable lands inventory. So when we looked at existing ownership of property, so kind of taking away publicly owned lands from kind of redevelopment or development potential, taking away properties that had a pretty high building or structure value and might be less likely to redevelop in the near term. And then also taking away those areas that have high quality natural resources and steep slopes, we're kind of left with these neighborhoods. That's not to say that development couldn't occur outside of them, but this is where we really expect new housing to be concentrated in. So there are these neighborhood areas that start to emerge. This map also shows where new roads from South Cooper Mountain, which is just to the south of the project area, will kind of lead into this area. So this map also shows how we really need to think about balancing natural resources and wildlife corridors, parks, and think about, how are we providing access to nature and park and trails for each of these neighborhood areas, so in an equitable way. Our second plan concept was housing options for all. So I'm not sure if this group has maybe received an update on the new state housing law. So House Bill 2001 was passed by the state, and it essentially requires wider housing variety in neighborhoods. So anywhere that the city allows a detached single family home, we now would have to allow a duplex on that lot as well. And in areas in zones that allow detached single family homes, we also really have to provide for these other types of homes to be built as well. So that might include duplex, triplex. We do already allow, some of these smaller single family detached. I have some more types on here. We have a fourplex. We have courtyard apartments, cottage clusters, which are essentially detached single family homes that are kind of designed around a common area, kind of common green space. And so as part of this project, we need to figure out how to comply with this new housing rule. There's a separate effort that's being done to look at how we comply citywide, and that's called the Housing Options Project. So that's going on right now as well. But for Cooper Mountain, we may take a different approach to compliance with this new state housing rule. In addition, we're looking to provide some of these higher density housing types that are kind of separate from this housing rule. So we are looking at opportunities for live work potentially, mixed use buildings, and then apartments as well. We are also thinking about how to provide the types of businesses and services that can help meet the daily needs of residents. And so commercial areas can really be a vital part of a community. They typically need a few kind of ingredients for success. Location is very important. So businesses usually like to have some visibility from kind of well-traveled areas. We're also thinking about the size of commercial spaces. Our market study found that we could probably support up to a 2-acre site of commercial uses. So we wouldn't want to zone an area that's much larger than that, because there may not just be the market demand for that commercial space. We are looking at a couple of different ways we could deliver commercial uses. One is a neighborhood center. This might be a larger commercially zoned site that's on a major street. And then we're also thinking about corner stores that may be more distributed through neighborhoods. Think about kind of the neighborhood coffee shop, may just be a single structure, maybe even a converted house. And it could have flexible zoning to maybe, where it could be converted over time. And so these are ideas that you'll likely see kind of moving forward in the plan alternatives. And then we have environmental stewardship and resiliency. We're thinking about how to integrate nature into the built environment, retaining some of the existing mature trees in the area, providing access to the great public views that exist on the mountain, and then enhancing creeks and habitat areas, particularly the creek system, and then also providing trails to connect people to natural areas and destinations. So really thinking about trails as transportation. And this slide shows some of the existing public facilities in the area. So a lot of these are located actually outside the project boundary, but will serve Cooper Mountain. And so we are really working with our kind of partner agencies and jurisdictions to make sure that this area can be well served, providing equitable access from these neighborhoods to public facilities such as parks and plazas and other community gathering spaces. All right, so now I think we're to the slides where everybody will be most interested here. We are looking at transportation choices for Cooper Mountain, really thinking about streets as places for people, not just cars. And so we're looking at the different kind of design elements that may be used, making sure that people feel safe and comfortable walking, biking, hopefully eventually taking transit within the study area. This map shows potential new road corridors that the project team is evaluating. And I wanted to kind of just highlight, here we have the existing arterials. So these are county roads that already go through the area. Right now, these are 2-lane rural roads, no bike or pedestrian facilities. So we have Tile Flat at the kind of southern end, Grabhorn Road to the west, Kimmer Road to the north, We also have Weir Road, and then 175th is really that primary north-south arterial that runs through the project area. And then these are the 4, we could think of these as collector road designations, potentially. So collector routes that would run within the project area, and these would be new connections. So these are, I should say, not proposed, but they're definitely under study at this time. We've done kind of minimal engineering, looking at the topography, really thinking about grade and having adequate spacing for these intersections, but there's more work to be done on the design front. And then we're also working closely with THPRD as well as Metro regarding the trail network in the area. So this, I'd say, borrows largely from the concept plan for the area that was completed in 2015. But in working with our partners, we know that we really need to be mindful of connections to the nature park because there are some sensitive species in the area. And then making sure that I think the trails that run maybe adjacent to roadways, again, are kind of, what's that experience? Do you feel like you're next to the creek and kind of, is it a nature trail, but it's still pretty direct and gets you there in time? What's the different experience for some of these kind of hierarchy of trails? We have regional and then maybe more neighborhood serving trails. That leads us into our discussion questions. Wanted to kind of turn it over to you all at this point, and we don't have to answer these in order, but I'd really like to hear your thoughts on, what should we consider as we develop plans for, our trail network and pedestrian and bicycle connections, particularly given that this area has really challenging slopes. In a lot of places near the creek, we're talking about 15 to 25% slope. And then, what are some design elements that you really recommend, and do they differ if you're maybe riding your bike from your house to a store? Or what would you want that experience to be if you were riding from, your home to maybe a local park or one of those collector roads? So I'm going to stop sharing, but I can pull up a map if that's helpful for kind of conversation.
I'm glad you brought up slope.
Oh, sorry. Cassara, do you want to grab those questions from your PowerPoint and put them in the chat, and then you can pull up the map?
Yep, I can do that.
Go ahead, Nadia.
I'm glad you brought up slope because, as you know, an important factor in active transportation and bicycle use is how safe people feel when they're on their bicycle. And in the case of a bicycle lane that's part of the street, that people aren't even 100% safe feeling in all of the time. Now factor in when you're going up a steep slope and you're going extra slow, that will just increase your discomfort with, being in a bike lane immediately next to traffic. And it's in those cases when you might want to consider having, physically separated trail space or sidewalk that a cyclist would feel free to use. Then going up a slope, they don't have to feel quite as self-conscious about their speed. And likewise, even on the down slopes, you're going to have cyclists who feel different amounts of comfort with how quickly they go downhill. If you have pedestrians sharing that space, I imagine a pedestrian would be very intimidated by a cyclist who's going at full speed downhill in the same area. So just, things to consider. Again, thank you for thinking of slope as a big factor.
And along with that separation of the lanes is whether doing switchbacks or something of that nature to be able to reduce that gradient and make it something that people are going to be or easily be able to handle, and it also encourage more people to actually use trails or bike lanes. Other feedback?
I'd say in terms of from a cyclist perspective for design elements for a commercial area, the way a business is situated relative to the road in terms of parking, I think would really impact sort of cyclist experience. If I'm going to a store and get off the road and then have to go through the whole parking lot and dodge more cars, that's sort of off-putting in terms of comfort and safety. It's much better for a cyclist if the there's not that sort of big barrier of parking between you and the store.
Excellent point, Michael. Yeah, Nathaniel.
I would say that a local really good example of handling slopes, at least on trails that aren't near roads, is the West Side Regional Trail.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of good hills on that trail, and the switchbacks there are being navigated by both pedestrians and cyclists regularly, and it's, gets the heart rate up, but they manage to navigate it at really no more than 5 or 6%, I think, on most of those.
Just another quick thought as far as with the commercial areas is also making sure they're incorporating in accessible and safe bike parking, whether it's covered, something like that, so that people know when they're going someplace, there's a destination where their bikes can be safe.
That's great. Yeah, I was reminded that the Cooper Mountain Nature Park does not allow dogs or bikes, so having parking, at those kind of connections will probably be important as well.
Any other feedback right now? And certainly it's something I guess we could always, people think about it more, can shoot you notes and.
Yeah, that would be great. I'll enter my contact information in the chat. And then we will have, I think, another kind of big public engagement push once those alternatives are development. So it'd be great to come back or at least share. Yeah.
One other real quick question is, as far as tile flat, is that going to be getting upgraded to be handling the additional traffic that's coming from both South Cooper and this project? Because that's a very popular cycling road.
Yes, I'd say all of those existing arterials are getting a lot of traffic right now, just with the increase in usage from development in South Cooper Mountains. So that's only going to grow over time. There's a lot of development underway in South Cooper Mountains. So we are working closely with our partners at Washington County to try to kind of get out, I'd say get out in front of it, but it's already happening. But we're really trying to advocate for, working on some of these safety improvements sooner than later, because we realize that it's an issue now. And Jean, maybe you can elaborate on that, but.
Yeah, no, I think, we're growing and we're at the edge of the urban growth boundary right there. So it's interesting to hear from you, Mike, that it's a popular bike route. And, there's having that awareness of the demands on those roads and the needs, as Cassara said, the county's making steps, towards that. So yeah, helpful to hear your feedback.
Great. Sarah, thanks so much for your time, and we look forward to having you back as this continues to progress along.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Yeah.
So Jean, so running out, do you want us to still try to do the City Council annual report, or should we hold that till October? We can spend more time on it. What do you think?
Yeah, we packed a lot in tonight. But I think maybe that was good.
Yeah, I think it was all great information.
Yeah. So, right, we had wanted to have about 15 minutes to review that draft. your latest draft slideshow. We're already at 8:20. I think we should maybe give a teaser.
Okay.
And at least like have you share. We can email it, the draft slideshow to folks too, just so you have it and you can kind of think about it after tonight. So why don't we do that? My updates can be super brief. And then we always like to make time for you all to share any updates here at the end. So I don't want to lose that opportunity.
Right.
So let me
You want to bring it
let me
up?
go ahead and share this. Yes, where is it? Ta-da! Hold on. See, I can have you see it this way. Hold on, I have it open. Okay, there's the first slide. Let me share it full screen. And Mike, I guess I'll let you narrate this.
Okay.
This is your work in progress.
So just what I tried to do was essentially pull up what are some of the major projects or that we've provided input to. And as I look through the list and everything, I think we've taken the A of BAC very seriously in the last year and a half, 2 years. We've provided a lot of advice and our input, and I think it's been well received. So basically, I was just trying to list, here are some of the major projects that we've been involved in, that we've provided feedback to different agencies. And then the next couple slides, I listed out some of the other things that are accomplishments and things we've done. And I want to congratulate everybody in the input that you've had, because we really have been involved in a lot of things in the midst of a pandemic. So judging the safe routes, volunteering at the Safe Route to School rodeos, advocating for more bike repair stations, and that's something in 2022 that's going to be coming to fruition with that first one. Helping to develop some routes, just workarounds with Bike Beaverton being canceled, and our involvement in the OATS conference. And then again, with the project that Will brought to us with having the BIPOC ride, I think that's going to be a great thing in the future as he takes that forward. Initial guidance with the Bike Beaverton map, and I think that's something we'll be working on in 2022. Those letters of support, re-engaging with the Why We Ride program, and as Amanda pointed out, a great thing to include is that we were named the Walk and Roll champions by Beaverton Safe Route to School program. So then I was thinking, what are some things that we can think about? And this is where I really want to have input in this to be something that's coming from the entire committee and reflects the committee and where we want to go. But these are a few ideas of things we'll be working on next year. Bike Beaverton is going to be back, fingers crossed, on the 22nd of May. So that's going to be a big focus, and I think it'll be a big event of just bringing people back together in a normal event. We'll have the lab application to be working on, focusing again on the Bike Beaverton map, and potentially depending on the direction the committee wants to go with, how do we continue to integrate that Why We Ride outreach in some way, shape, or form. And then finally, as we talk to the council, I think it's what are the things that we might want to encourage them to pursue. And so a few things that jumped out at me is, and this is, Jean had some great input, is just kind of focusing on a few specific things. What are things that we can be asking them to be looking at from a budgetary standpoint, from a staffing standpoint, that they could support and help to bring about. So a couple ideas are looking at the active transportation plan and things like the neighborhood bikeways that's a part of that, the installation of sharrows and wayfinding signs. Some of these projects that may have lower costs associated with it, but I think would have big impact on the bicycling experience in the city. Looking at the climate action plan, I was taking a look at that last night, and specifically a couple points they talk about is transportation with alternatives to vehicles and the active transportation, as well as community well-being, livability, health, and safety. And to me, promoting cycling and alternative transportation really can kind of help to meet that. but that's just kind of how I'm looking at it. So I'm really looking for the committee. What are some things that you want to ask the council for? Other things you think we should be pointing out in our report out? And I know that Councilor Hassan is encouraged, make it focused on the big points because they have a lot of these presentations that are being made to them. So really want an opportunity to engage them and light some ideas potentially for them to be able to pursue. So I'll open it up there and we can just kind of have a brief conversation and certainly give everyone time to think more about it and maybe shoot us ideas as we continue to build this presentation out.
I'm happy to pull the slides back up if you need them, but I thought it was better for you all to see sort of all of you. Can I add one thing, Mike, on the ask thing? Because I think when you and I were emailing, we kind of dove into projects like build things. Right. And there's some other things that are sort of programmatic things, like an example that is not necessarily ours, but it's like safe routes to schools. Those are right. Programmatic things. But just also listening to Lake tonight reminded me that there's also sort of policy work that the council does, addressing policy needs, right? Overall guidance that's not it doesn't necessarily cost money. It's not a building a thing. It's not creating a program. And sort of tied with that might be legislation. And, if you listen to what Lake was talking about, there's some things in there that are that happen through local and state law. So I just wanted to sort of throw that out there too, because Mike, you and I hadn't really talked about sort of the policy side of things.
Right.
So.
And I think with bringing up this Vision Zero, that's something that a number of years ago, our committee tried to push a little bit in the city, and the council sort of went in a different direction as far as adopting that, but maybe that would be something to kind of revisit and encourage them to look at, or complete streets, since that's something that League of American Bicyclists specifically mentioned, trying to have the city adopt a complete street program. And even though what we have kind of is that, it doesn't have that name to it. So maybe those are some things to kind of touch on with them.
One thing, I thought using the active transportation plan as sort of a springboard for sort of future engagement with council is good. One thing that I sort of came up in a previous meeting this year is it doesn't, there are some specific goals within the ATP about like, we want X miles of sidewalks or bikeways or what have you. And at least from what I remember from that meeting, the city does not measure that, or does not at least make those results publicly available. So I think it wouldn't be too great of an ask in terms, like if we're talking about what can we ask of council that's not a undue burden. I think having sort of progress updates on the ATP and what the city has done would be sort of a good sort of low cost ask for us to make.
Good input. Anything else that just jumps out right now? Like I said, we can revisit it next month or provide a chance to kind of look at it and sort of toss it around in your mind and shoot back some other ideas.
And I'll add one thing too that you didn't see tonight are photos. We know it needs photos.
Yeah, right.
And images. So those that we'll get those added into. I'll go back through old presentations and grab some photos. And then it looks like Ananda put in the chat, please share the slide set so we can work offline for sure.
Yeah,
I think what we'll do is we'll have you feed your comments to Mike so that he can be the one to sort of compile them all and keep working towards that. And I know that Mike and Amanda and I will meet again at some point before our next meeting, and we'll have some more conversations. So great suggestion, Amanda. I can send it out when we get off tonight.
Okay,
Send that to all of you.
that sounds great. And I think it's just kind of looking at what other things can we do, make suggestions on how active transportation, bicycling, just sort of incorporated into communication from the city. Are there just subtle ways in publications and things like that, that just that idea can sort of be planted? So great. So Jane, do you want to do a brief run over, and then we can open it up for anything that committee members have to share?
Great. I'm going to be very brief then. So I sent you all our September updates for boards and commissions and NACs. You know, the first message and the primary message, I think, really from us this month is just really about helping us mitigate the COVID-19 surge. And I know Councilor Hassan spoke about that. You know, please get vaccinated if you can. The county's website has a lot of information about testing, where you can find that available. You know, the state has mask requirements that are in effect for everyone here in Oregon. You know, just please be safe and keep your distance. A lot of resources online to help you find resources and get information about how to stay safe. There's a runoff election for Beaverton City Council Position 1, and election date is Tuesday, September 21st. There is a fall voters forum that was tonight while we were meeting. I know that it gets recorded and you can view it online. If you go to the city's website, beavertonoregon.gov/votersforum, you'll be able to watch it there, and it's also on 12th Valley Community TV. So that's happened. And then we heard about the vision survey tonight. So 2 other quick things that I wanted to let you know. I shared with you last month or the month before that the Washington County is doing the next iteration of the Major Streets Transportation Improvement Program. So just so you know, the county staff is making a presentation to City Council next week on Tuesday evening. They'll have City Council have a work session to share some of their input and thoughts on how that on project priorities and program priorities for that moving ahead. And I'll leave it at that.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Well, thanks so much, Jean. And just for the good of the order, anybody on the committee, anything you want to share, comments, other announcements with other groups that you're involved with that you think we should know about, anything like that? All right. Well, I hope, and also everyone who was on the Providence Bridge pedal with our little group, I know I didn't see anybody, but it was quite a bit of fun. That's what I never quite realized, how steep the Fremont Bridge is when you're going north.
Yes.
And I encountered e-bikes on that.
Lot of fun.
Fast.
Yeah.
So, all right, everybody. Well, thank you so much. We will see you in October. Be safe. Anything's coming up as we're going along, please reach out and we will see you then. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.